Goes from nursing home to hospice. And thank you that vaccines are here and he's been getting them. But I pray that you would continue to keep him healthy, but also as he gives a glimmer of hope in the twilight of people's lives, that even then they would see Jesus. Lord, we thank you for the work you've done in keeping all of us healthy. I think of some other folks that are getting the vaccine, some of our nurses, some of our teachers. That first one's okay, the second one, they're feeling it. Get them through it, Lord. Please, get them through it. We thank you that Kurt, Jane are here. Pray for continued healing in Kurt's life. Give him the peace that passes all understanding as he guards his heart and mind in Jesus Christ. We thank you for the Musgraves. You've given them, they sold their house. Somebody offered overpriced cash in hand. Amazing. It's more than we asked or imagined or prayed for. So thank you for meeting their need and exceeding it, and that they found a great place to call home in Nurk. I said it right. Be with our brother Matt as he continues to deal with his blood condition. Keep him safe. Keep it in remission. Keep it slow moving. The same for Jason Kong, so that they can be with us and their family as long as it's your will. And we do rely upon the will of God. Not to our glory and not to our will, but to your glory, and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we've asked you to come and to help us. And we believe and we trust that you will do that. And because our faith is not based on some blind leap, but you have a track record with us. Your past performance is the best predictor of future success. And you have a great track record. And so it would be silly of us to not have faith in what you would do in our future as we ask. Through Christ, we do pray with the same power that resurrected Jesus from the dead is the power that we're relying on to get us up every day. Amen. Okay. Sorry about that, virtual folks. Hopefully you heard me as I wandered around touching base and asking God to come be with us. You may have had some prayer requests you were sharing online if you felt comfortable in the comments section. Hey, I forgot to mention, if you're here with YouTube, I feel like one of those YouTubers now, don't I? Don't forget to hit subscribe. Please do hit subscribe. There's some real practical reasons that helps Walnut Creek and what we can offer in the future if you do that. All right, commercial over. Let's tune our attention now. Let's dial in to Romans chapter 12. That's the radio frequency we're on. We're looking at the latter half of that chapter, verses 9 through 21. So get your finger in there. I do know it'll be behind me on the screen. There are two things that a church planter fears the most for their budding congregation: explosion and implosion. The Apostle Paul was no different. As a church planter, traveling around Asia Major and Asia Minor, mainly Major Minor, as a church planter, he feared explosion and implosion. He feared that Pax Romana might snuff out the early Christians in Rome, because that's what Rome did. In the name of peace, they wiped out their enemies, and nobody could stand against them. Christianity threatened the beliefs and the cultural norms and the systemic power dynamics of Rome. But the greater threat for Paul in the early church was not explosion, external forces persecuting them or putting them down or annihilating them. No, the greater threat was implosion. Disharmony from within that would derail and destroy the church. You know this to be true. If a church or a family or a team or an organization has healthy relationships and a shared mission, it can withstand external pressures well and will probably survive as they're banded strong together. But if a church or a family or a team or an organization isn't on the same page and disagree and quibble and fight, more concerned about individual rights and opinions than the groups, not maintaining healthy relationships, they don't need an outside force to destroy them. No, they're doing it from within. And implosion is always more destructive and catastrophic than explosion. So Paul lays out the central theme of his letter. And he says this: the gospel is the power of God unto salvation for everyone, Jews and Greeks, the religious and the unreligious, the slave and the free, the poor and the rich, the employers and the employees, the white collar and the blue collar, adults, teens, children. Everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. And as a life transformed by the gospel, it means that we're transformed completely. Our hearts, our minds, our opinions, our relationships. Our entire identity is a new one. It's different. We no longer think and act as we used to or as the world thinks and acts. We think and we feel and we act differently because we feel and we act and we think like Jesus. And Paul tells us how our new gospel identity leads to gospel relating. In our passage today, we see how Christians specifically are to relate to friends and even relate to their enemies. Follow along with me. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal, but fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. I wish Facebook had that as their motto. Sorry, I got off a tangent. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed them. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The first part of Paul's letter, actually most of it, chapters 1 through 11, he addresses orthodoxy, correct beliefs. And now we're heading to a whole new section, the rest of the book, chapters 12 through 16, where Paul is now going to deal with orthopraxy. Ooh, new word for you. Hopefully it'll come up on the crossword puzzle on Sunday's edition. That is correct actions. Orthodoxy, correct believing. Orthopraxy, correct doing or actions. Now, Christianity, my friends, is a combination of both. Our conduct and our actions flow from our beliefs. Romans 12, 1 through 8, which we looked at last Sunday, started us down the path of orthopraxy by telling us to offer ourselves in service to God. And the mindset in which our service must always have is humility. Because as we offer ourselves in service to God, which is our spiritual act of worship, we're also offering ourselves to His creation, to other people, and we're to always do that with humility, not considering ourselves better than anyone else. We're to serve each other in the church, especially by generously employing the gifts that God has given us for the mutual building and benefit of the body. And then we come to verse 9 of chapter 12, and he's going to move on with the orthopraxy, the practices that are good. And 12:9 is the thesis for all of the Christians' conduct and actions. Let love be genuine. And if we go on and look through it here, we see in this passage we're told to love without hypocrisy, to love with truth, to love with affection, to love with respect, to love with zeal, to love with patience, to love with practical generosity, to love without bitterness, to love with empathy, to love with unity of mind, to love with humility. So, what do you think the main thrust of this passage is? And we're not going to stop. We're going to get more of it next week. And the next week. Here's how we're going to break down the message today. We're going to do it in two categories this morning. Talk about how to love friends, it's verses 9 through 13, and how to love enemies, the rest of the chapter. First of all, how to love our friends. First of all, here's how we love our friends. We must understand that real love is truthful. There are three imperatives in this passage about loving. Be sincere, hate evil, cling to good. They're about truth. First, we're told that our love must be true to our heart. Literally, the word sincere in Greek means unhypocritical. So we're not to be phony in our dealings with people. We're not to be polite and helpful and apparently warm and cordial on the outside while on the inside despising them. This is so important because within the church and any community which emphasizes traditional values, a culture of niceness can develop in which a veneer of pleasantness covers over a spirit of backbiting or gossip or prejudice. My southern side of the family mastered this, as they would add, bless her heart, to the most negative remark imaginable and make it sound genteel, even kind and sympathetic, as far as backhanded compliments go. She couldn't bake a decent pecan pie if her life depended on it. Bless her heart. And I said it right, pecan. Take it one step further. Oh, look, she's got on white shoes after Labor Day. God love her. It sounds kind and loving. But the implication is that we can call on the Almighty to love her despite the many errors of her ways. Or even worse, God better love them because I don't. You see, speaking the truth in love occurs when people love each other enough to confront and be direct about problems and sins in oneself and in one's friends. So secondly, about speaking the truth in love, we're told both negatively, right, hate, and positively cling, that our love must be true to God's will. And we're told here that our love must remember and operate on the basis of the moral order of God. We must hate, literally be horrified by what God calls evil, and we must cling, literally, to glue ourselves inseparably, to tie ourselves to the mast to what God calls good. And why is this so important? Well, because if we love someone, when we really love someone, it often distorts our view of good and evil. Song lyrics capture this problem. If loving you is so wrong, I don't want to be right. You've heard that song on the radio, haven't you? It can't be wrong if it feels so right or good. In other words, if you love someone, your heart is bound up or tied with the heart of the other. And so their distress becomes yours, and their happiness becomes yours. And therein lies the temptation to give the loved one what creates emotional joy rather than what might be best for them, but which may create emotional sadness or anger. We see this problem often in child rearing. The parents don't punish their children consistently because they just can't bear. They get tired of the tears and the anger and the outbursts. But the result of a discipline-less childhood is always disastrous. So it may seem strange to tell someone to love and then to hate in the same sentence, but that's exactly what Paul is doing here. We cannot love rightly without hating rightly. Let me unpack this. We can see that this is closely linked to the sincerity that Paul talks about. Real love loves the beloved enough to be tough. Real love, as John Stott put it, is so passionately devoted to the beloved that it hates every evil which is compatible with his or her highest welfare. So God's law reveals how our world and our souls were designed. And to disobey God's law is always bad for the beloved. Therefore, real love is concerned for the truth. And any love that is afraid to confront the beloved is really not love, but just a selfish desire to be loved. And this kind of selfish love is afraid to do what's right towards God and towards your beloved if it risks losing the affection of the beloved. And so it makes an idol out of your beloved. It says, I'll do anything to keep him or her loving me. I'll allow anything so long as they keep loving me. My friends, that's not loving the person. That's just loving the love you get from the person. Or in other words, it's actually loving yourself more than loving them. So any love that cuts corners morally or that fails to confront is not really love at all. Now, am I back on? Testing 1, 2, 3. It was me? Okay. Sorry about that. Little glitch in the matrix. True love is willing to confront, even to lose the beloved in the short run if there's a chance to help him or her. I found this quote from Henry Ward Beecher regarding this. He said this, "It is one of the severest tests of friendship to tell your friend his faults. So, to love a man that you cannot bear to see a stain upon him, and to speak painful truth through loving words, that is friendship." So, real love is truthful. Need to move on. Real love is patient. Makes sense. I know some of you just ran through your minds 1 Corinthians 13, right? Love is what? Patient. Love is kind. That's how Paul starts that. You see, here's how my dad defined it. It's the definition of patience that I grew up with. Patience is a willingness to be inconvenienced. Dang, that's a tough one, isn't it? Because that means I can be inconvenienced on the outside, but I can be grumbling on the inside. Patience is willing to be inconvenienced on the outside and the inside. So verses 11 and 12 give us four imperatives that are really calls to patience. And at first, these first two verses seem to be about our relationship with God, but we have to notice that they stand in the very middle of numerous directions about Christian relationships. So therefore, Paul is really exhorting us to use all of our spiritual resources to not give up on the Christian brother and sisters around us. So we must keep hope. We must be patient in all of the troubles we meet, and we must address this with prayer. So real love is patient. It perseveres. It forbears. Real love also, in addition to these, puts others first. In verse 10, the last half of verse 10, we're told to do what? Honor one another above ourselves. Paul says the same thing in Philippians 2, verse 3. Esteem others more highly than yourself. The word honor means to treat someone or something as valuable or precious. And there are deep theological roots here. Christianity and Judaism understand that every human being is created imago Dei, in the image of God. And we as creatures, as human creatures, we were designed to bear a resemblance to God in our rationality and in our personality and in our creativity and our eternal soul and on and on. Therefore, each person we meet, each person we encounter is infinitely precious and important and should be treated as such. So it means that to listen to the other person, to be aware of his or her hopes and joys and needs and fears, and to be considerate of them. And the essence of love is not to concentrate on our own image and position and needs, but on the needs of others. How do we treat our friends? Paul tells us that real love is truthful, real love is patient, real love puts others first, and real love combines feeling with action. We're called to have empathy with others. In a powerful verse, verse 15, we're called to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. But then in verse 13, Paul essentially says, put your money where your mouth is. He calls us to not just rejoice and to weep, not just to feel what others are feeling, but to share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. We're to share our homes. We're to share our money, our things with those who need them. And this verse 13 needs to be seen in the context with the rest of the exhortations, which press us to be truthful and devoted despite our feelings. And so we see that real love is not about sentimentality and feeling. It's not just a noun, but it's a verb. It's an activity of meeting needs. It's an activity of moving beyond ourselves and being less concerned with ourselves and being more concerned with those around us. Why can we be more concerned with others? Because here's where gospel identity leads to gospel relating. Because our identity is rock solid. Take it to the bank. That's sure. And because we are sure and right with God, and God is right with us and loves us, well, then that allows us to move outside of ourselves. So that's how we love our friends. How Christians love each other. How do we love our enemies? Well, the basic principle laid down in summary is in verse 21. Overcome evil with good. Now, the word overcome, that's a military word. It means to overpower. That's an extremely radical and penetrating insight. Does that mean we're to wrestle our enemies to the ground? We're to so obliterate their arguments that they're left in a puddle of nonsensical irrationality? Paul says that to repay evil with evil is to immediately lose the battle with evil. The only way to defeat evil is with doing good to the one who has done harm. In other words, if you hate the person who has wronged you, that person has won. And the only way to defeat evil is to forgive and love that person. Or another way to put it, when we identify evil too closely with the evildoer, or I guess we could